Let me tell you a truth most people don't want to say out loud. The problem isn't always that a man can't love you. The real problem is that many women are trying to build a deep emotional connection with someone who simply isn't emotionally available. And when someone is emotionally unavailable, no amount of love, patience, or effort from you will magically make them ready. Because emotional availability isn't something you can pull out of someone. It's something they have to bring into the relationship themselves. So if you've ever felt confused, if you've ever wondered, why does he seem interested one day and distant the next? Today, we're going to talk about the truth about emotional availability in men. 1. Emotional availability is a choice, not just a personality trait. One of the biggest misunderstandings people have about emotional availability is that they treat it like it's a personality trait that someone either has or doesn't have. People often say things like, he's just not an emotional person, nor he's not good with feelings, as if that somehow explains everything. But the truth is much deeper than that. Emotional availability is not simply about personality. It's about willingness. It's about maturity. And most importantly, it's about choice. A man can be intelligent, successful, charming, funny, and even incredibly kind, yet still be emotionally unavailable in a relationship. That's because emotional availability is not about how someone appears on the surface. It's about how they show up when things start to matter. It's about what happens when a relationship moves beyond the early excitement and begins to require vulnerability, consistency, and emotional investment. In the beginning of many relationships, everything feels easy. There's attraction, excitement, curiosity, and the thrill of getting to know someone new. During this stage, even someone who is emotionally unavailable can appear incredibly present. They can text often, they can make plans, they can say all the right things. But early attraction doesn't require much emotional risk. It's light, it's exciting, and it's comfortable because no one is asking for real emotional depth yet. The real test of emotional availability begins when the relationship starts to move into deeper territory, when expectations begin to form, when feelings become real, when someone starts asking for consistency, honesty, and emotional connection. This is the moment where emotionally available people lean in, and emotionally unavailable people begin to pull away. An emotionally available man understands that a relationship is not just about the fun moments. It's also about communication, vulnerability, and being present when things are uncomfortable. He doesn't see emotional connection as pressure. He sees it as part of building something meaningful. That doesn't mean he has to be perfect with his words or always know exactly how to express himself. Emotional availability isn't about flawless communication. It's about the willingness to try. When someone is emotionally available, they are willing to talk about what they feel instead of hiding behind silence. They are willing to share what is going on in their life instead of keeping you at a distance. They are willing to listen when something matters to you instead of dismissing your emotions. That willingness is the key difference. On the other hand, someone who is emotionally unavailable often creates confusion. They might show interest one day and distance the next. They might express affection but avoid deeper conversations. They might enjoy spending time with you but resist any form of emotional responsibility in the relationship. This inconsistency can make you feel like you are constantly trying to figure out where you stand. And this is where many people fall into a painful trap. When someone gives you just enough attention to keep you hopeful, but not enough consistency to feel secure, it creates a cycle of emotional uncertainty. You start analyzing every message, every interaction, every moment of closeness. You begin asking yourself questions like, did I do something wrong? Or maybe if I give him more space, things will get better. But emotional availability is not something you unlock by behaving perfectly. It's not something you earn by being more patient, more understanding, or more accommodating. If someone is truly emotionally available, you don't have to twist yourself into different shapes just to keep their attention. They show up because they want to be there. A man who chooses emotional availability doesn't disappear when things start to get real. He doesn't suddenly become distant when feelings grow deeper. Instead, he becomes more invested. He becomes more intentional with his actions. He understands that connection grows through openness, not avoidance. Another important truth is that emotional availability often reflects where someone is in their life emotionally. Sometimes a man may have gone through difficult experiences that made him cautious about opening up. Sometimes he may be focused on other areas of his life and not ready to invest emotionally in a relationship. These realities can be understandable, but they still lead to the same outcome. If someone is not ready to show up emotionally, the relationship cannot grow in a healthy way. Understanding this is incredibly important because it helps you stop personalizing someone else's limitations. When someone is emotionally unavailable, it doesn't automatically mean you are not worthy of love or connection. It often means they are not in a place where they can give what a real relationship requires. Unfortunately, many people spend months or even years trying to interpret mixed signals from someone who simply isn't ready. They hold on to the hope that if they are patient enough, supportive enough, or loving enough, the other person will eventually open up. But emotional availability doesn't emerge from pressure or persuasion. It comes from self-awareness and personal readiness. Think about the difference between someone who is hesitant but willing to grow and someone who is completely closed off. A man who is emotionally available may not always express himself perfectly, but you will see effort. You will see him trying to communicate. You will see him making space for your feelings and acknowledging the importance of the relationship. And emotionally, unavailable man, however, often avoids those moments entirely. He may change the subject when conversations become deeper. He may withdraw when you express emotional needs. He may act affectionate during good moments, but become distant when real connection requires vulnerability. The important thing to understand is that emotional availability reveals itself through patterns, not promises. Anyone can say they care. Anyone can express affection in the moment, but emotionally available people demonstrate their intentions through consistent behavior over time. Consistency is one of the clearest signs of emotional availability. When someone is emotionally present, their actions align with their words. You don't feel like you are constantly questioning their interest. You don't feel like you are chasing reassurance or trying to decode their behavior. Instead, you experience something that many people rarely talk about in modern dating: emotional stability. There is a sense that the connection is mutual. There is a sense that both people are investing in the relationship instead of one person constantly trying to hold everything together. And this is why recognizing emotional availability early is so powerful. When you understand that emotional availability is a choice, you stop trying to convince someone to become someone they're not ready to be. You stop interpreting every moment of distance as a puzzle you need to solve. Instead, you begin to observe. You begin to notice how someone responds when connection deepens. Do they lean in or do they retreat? Do they communicate honestly or do they avoid emotional conversations? Do they show consistency or do they create confusion? These patterns reveal far more than words ever could. The truth is that real connection is built between two people who are both willing to be emotionally present. It's not built through chasing, guessing, or hoping someone will eventually change. It grows when both people are ready to invest their energy, their vulnerability, and their attention into something meaningful. When a man chooses emotional availability, he doesn't just show interest when it's convenient. He shows up when it matters. He listens when something is important to you. He communicates even when conversations feel uncomfortable. And he recognizes that emotional connection is not a burden, but a responsibility that comes with caring about someone. 2, you can't fix someone who isn't ready. One of the hardest truths to accept in relationships is that you cannot fix someone who isn't ready. It's a painful realization because when we care about someone, our natural instinct is to try harder. We believe that if we are patient enough, loving enough, supportive enough, eventually something will change. We convince ourselves that the potential we see in someone will eventually become reality. But the truth is that no amount of love from one person can force emotional growth in another. When someone is not emotionally ready for a relationship, it doesn't always look obvious at the beginning. In fact, the early stages can feel incredibly promising. There may be chemistry, deep conversations, laughter, and moments that make you feel like the connection is special. Because of these moments, you begin to believe that if you just give things time, the relationship will naturally grow stronger. But over time, a pattern begins to appear. You notice that whenever the relationship starts to move toward deeper commitment or emotional closeness, something shifts. The energy changes. The communication becomes inconsistent. Plans become uncertain. And suddenly you find yourself trying to hold together something that once felt effortless. This is where many people fall into the trap of becoming the emotional caretaker of the relationship. Instead of stepping back and asking whether the other person is capable of showing up in the same way, they begin working harder to compensate for the distance. They become more understanding, more forgiving, more patient. They tell themselves that love means supporting someone through their struggles. But there is a huge difference between supporting someone who is actively trying to grow and chasing someone who has no intention of changing. When someone truly wants to build a healthy relationship, they may not always get everything right, but you will see effort. You will see them trying to communicate, trying to understand, trying to move forward. Growth requires participation. When someone isn't ready, however, the effort usually flows in only one direction. You are the one initiating conversations. You are the one trying to resolve conflicts. You are the one making emotional space for the relationship while the other person remains distant or detached. Slowly, without even realizing it, you begin sacrificing your own emotional needs just to keep the connection alive. One of the reasons this dynamic is so powerful is because hope can be incredibly persuasive. You remember the good moments. You remember the times when they seemed open, affectionate, and invested. Those memories make you believe that the emotionally available version of them still exists somewhere, waiting to return if you just handle things the right way. So you start adjusting your behavior. You try not to bring up issues that might push them away. You try not to ask for too much attention or reassurance. You tell yourself that if you remain calm, patient, and supportive, eventually they will feel safe enough to open up. But the problem with this strategy is that it slowly turns the relationship into a one-sided emotional negotiation. Instead of two people building something together, it becomes one person constantly adapting in order to keep the other person comfortable. And over time, this imbalance begins to drain your emotional energy. You feel confused because the relationship never seems completely secure, yet you also feel attached because of the moments when things feel good again. This cycle can continue for a long time because emotionally unavailable people often give just enough connection to keep hope alive. They may return after periods of distance. They may express affection in moments when they sense you pulling away. These temporary bursts of closeness make it seem like progress is happening, even though the deeper pattern of avoidance remains the same. The truth is that emotional readiness is something that comes from within a person. It happens when someone becomes aware of their own patterns, their fears, and their responsibilities in relationships. It requires honesty with themselves and a genuine desire to grow. No partner can force that realization. No amount of love can accelerate that process if the person isn't willing to face it themselves. This is why trying to fix someone can become such an exhausting experience. You may believe that your love is helping them heal or evolve, but if they are not actively participating in their own growth, the relationship will remain stuck in the same cycle. You may spend months or even years waiting for a breakthrough that never comes. Another difficult aspect of this situation is that many emotionally unavailable people are not intentionally trying to hurt anyone. They may genuinely enjoy your company. They may care about you in their own way. But caring about someone and being ready to build a relationship are two very different things. Emotional. Readiness requires responsibility, communication, and consistency. When someone is not ready for that level of commitment, they may still stay connected because the relationship provides comfort, attention, or companionship. But without emotional investment, the connection cannot grow into something stable. It remains in a constant state of uncertainty, where the future always feels unclear. During this time, it's easy to begin questioning yourself. You might wonder if you are asking for too much. You might think that if you were more understanding, less emotional, or more independent, things would improve. This kind of self-doubt can slowly change the way you see yourself. You start shrinking your expectations to match the limitations of the relationship. Instead of asking for consistency, you settle for occasional effort. Instead of expecting emotional openness, you accept silence and distance. Over time, your standards for connection become smaller and smaller because you are trying to adapt to someone who cannot meet them. But real relationships are not meant to function this way. A healthy relationship is built on mutual effort. Both people contribute emotionally. Both people care about understanding each other. Both people take responsibility for maintaining the connection. When you are constantly trying to fix someone, the relationship becomes unbalanced. You become responsible not only for your own emotions, but also for managing theirs. You carry the weight of the relationship while they remain emotionally guarded or detached. Recognizing this dynamic is one of the most powerful steps you can take in protecting your emotional well-being. It allows you to step back and ask an important question. Is this person truly working toward the same kind of relationship that I want? If the answer is no, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop trying to transform them into someone they are not ready to be. Letting go of that responsibility can feel incredibly difficult because it means releasing the hope that things might change, but it also opens the door to something healthier. When you stop trying to fix someone who isn't ready, you free yourself to invest your energy in relationships where emotional effort is shared rather than one-sided. You create space for connections where communication, respect, and vulnerability flow naturally instead of being forced. Real love does not require constant persuasion. It does not require convincing someone to care or proving your worth through endless patience. The right relationship involves two people who are both willing to show up, communicate honestly, and grow together. You cannot fix someone who isn't ready, but you can choose not to lose yourself trying. And sometimes the most powerful act of self-respect is recognizing when your energy deserves to be given to someone who is truly prepared to meet you where you are. 3, the right man won't make you feel like you're two. One of the most damaging experiences in modern relationships is the feeling that your desire for emotional connection is somehow a problem. Many people enter relationships with a genuine desire to communicate, to understand each other, and to build something meaningful. But when they encounter someone who is emotionally unavailable, that natural desire for closeness can slowly start to feel like a burden. Instead of feeling appreciated for wanting connection, they begin to feel like they are asking for too much. It often begins in subtle ways. Maybe you express that you would like clearer communication. Maybe you mention that consistency matters to you. Maybe you simply want to understand where the relationship is going. These are not unreasonable desires. In fact, they are the foundation of any healthy relationship. But when someone is not emotionally prepared for that level of connection, your needs can suddenly be framed as pressure. Instead of engaging with your feelings, engage with the person. The other person might withdraw or become distant. They might say things like you are overthinking, or that you are being too intense, or that you should just relax and let things happen naturally. Over time, these responses can make you question whether your emotional needs are valid. You start wondering if maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you expect too much. Maybe you should be more laid back and stop bringing up things that create tension. Without even realizing it, you begin adjusting your behavior in order to avoid making the other person uncomfortable. You might stop asking questions that matter to you. You might ignore moments of inconsistency because you do not want to appear demanding. You might silence your own feelings just to keep the peace. The problem is that while you are doing all of this to protect the relationship, you are slowly disconnecting from your own emotional truth. A healthy relationship should never make you feel like your need for connection is a flaw. Wanting communication is not being needy. Wanting clarity is not being dramatic. Wanting consistency is not asking for too much. These things are simply the building blocks of trust. But when you are with someone who cannot meet those needs, it becomes easy to internalize the idea that you are somehow the problem. This is especially true if the person occasionally shows affection or warmth. Those moments can make you feel hopeful again, and you start thinking that maybe you just need to be more patient or understanding. The truth, however, is that the right person will not make you feel like your emotional depth is a burden. An emotionally available man understands that connection requires effort from both sides. He does not run from conversations that involve feelings. He does not see vulnerability as weakness. Instead, he sees it as part of building trust. This does not mean that he will always respond perfectly. No one communicates flawlessly all the time. But the difference is that he will be willing to engage. When something matters to you, he will listen. When there is confusion or tension, he will want to work through it instead of avoiding it. One of the clearest signs of emotional availability is how someone responds when you express your feelings. Do they become defensive and dismissive, or do they try to understand? Do they shut down the conversation, or do they remain present even when the topic is uncomfortable? These reactions reveal a lot about a person's capacity for emotional connection. When you are with someone who values emotional closeness, you do not feel like you have to shrink your personality to keep them around. You do not feel like you have to constantly monitor your words or hide your needs. Instead, You feel safe being honest about what matters to you. Unfortunately, many people spend a long time trying to adapt themselves to someone who cannot provide that kind of emotional space. They start lowering their expectations in order to keep the relationship functioning. They tell themselves that maybe love does not have to include deep communication or emotional openness, but this kind of compromise often leads to quiet frustration. On the surface, the relationship may appear stable, but underneath there is a growing sense that something important is missing. The conversations stay on the surface. The emotional connection never fully develops. And there is always a lingering feeling that you cannot completely be yourself. This is why it is so important to recognize that your emotional needs are not obstacles to love. They are the path to it. The right relationship will not require you to silence those needs. It will welcome them. When a man is emotionally available, he does not interpret your desire for connection as criticism. He understands that relationships thrive on communication and understanding. Instead of seeing emotional conversations as conflict, he sees them as opportunities to strengthen the bond between you. This kind of connection creates a very different atmosphere in the relationship. Instead of feeling anxious about bringing up your feelings, you feel comfortable expressing them. Instead of worrying that honesty will push the other person away, you trust that the relationship is strong enough to handle difficult conversations. Another powerful difference is the sense of security that comes from being with someone who values emotional connection. When a man is emotionally available, his actions and words align, he communicates clearly, he follows through on his commitments, he makes an effort to understand you rather than leaving you guessing about his intentions. This consistency creates a sense of calm in the relationship. You do not feel like you are constantly trying to decode mixed signals or wondering where you stand. Instead, there is clarity, there is mutual effort. There is a shared understanding that both people are invested in building something meaningful. When people experience this kind of connection, they often realize how exhausting their previous relationships had been. They recognize how much energy they spent trying to manage uncertainty, avoid conflict, and maintain emotional balance on their own. With the right person, that constant tension disappears. Instead of feeling like you have to chase reassurance, you feel supported. Instead of questioning your worth, you feel valued. Instead of wondering whether your emotions are too much, you feel understood. It is important to remember that your emotional depth is not something you need to hide or apologize for. The ability to care deeply, communicate openly, and seek meaningful connection is not a weakness. It is one of the most powerful qualities you can bring into a relationship. The key is finding someone who recognizes and appreciates that quality instead of resisting it. Someone who sees emotional connection as something worth investing in rather than something to avoid. When you stop trying to convince emotionally unavailable people to meet your needs, you begin to protect your emotional well-being. You start recognizing that the right relationship will not make you feel like you are asking for too much. Instead, it will make you feel like your needs are understood and respected. You deserve a relationship where you can speak honestly without fear of pushing someone away. You deserve a connection where your feelings are met with curiosity rather than dismissal. You deserve a partner who is willing to grow, communicate, and build emotional intimacy alongside you. And when you meet someone who is truly emotionally available, one of the most surprising things you will notice is how natural everything feels. There is less confusion, less second guessing, and less emotional strain. The relationship does not feel like a constant battle to be understood.